Did you know that before the invention of color television, most people dreamt in black and white? Today, our dreams and our sleep is as colorful as ever, reflecting the complex interplay of our brain's function during rest. Hello, and welcome back to the Gayu podcast. This podcast is all about empowering women through menopause and beyond. I'm your host, Gayu, a menopause wellness advocate and holistic coach, and my mission is to empower women to embrace menopause. Today, we are joined by an extraordinary guest, Mallon. Now, whose expertise in sleep has transformed life across Middle East and beyond. No wonder she's known as Middle East leading sleep expert. Now, whether she's training doctors, health professionals, or just the general public, Julie's mission is clear: to bring the conversation about sleep to the forefront of health discussions. She is a podcaster, she's an author, she's a keynote speaker, and she's a coach. And I'm super thrilled that she's part of my podcast today. Today, we'll be diving into the world of sleep hygiene, circadian rhythms, and of course, how sleep, or the lack of it, can affect women, particularly during menopause. Julie, welcome to the podcast. I am super thrilled and absolutely honored to have you here today.
Thank you. Honestly, it's a real honor too. And it's very interesting when you were giving, the introduction, and I was thinking of a question that somebody asked me last week, and it was, so what is my mission? Where do I see my vision? And I haven't been asked that in a long time. And I truly believe it's to educate as many people as possible around sleep. But it's also to take the pressure off sleep. So many people now are really anxious about their sleep. And I think we as health professionals are not helping. We seem to be building and layering that pressure around sleep, and we need to stop.
Okay. Interesting way, because, I think everyone's focus is on sleep, but they're not understanding why.
Yeah, but I think it is about understanding how much pressure we put on sleep. We're saying all the research is telling us, the health professionals, the neuroscientists, they're saying if you don't get this amount of sleep, this is going to happen. But actually, we need to be really saying what can you do as a starting point, and then we can move on. So it really is working in small, manageable points. Yeah. You were talking about sleep hygiene. I actually like to call it sleep health. Now, sleep hygiene is ultimately about developing healthy habits around sleep, and therefore recognizing what it is that we're trying to do in order to achieve healthy habits of sleep. Because when we say hygiene, we think about the dentist. So again, it's about changing the narrative. And that's one of the things that I'm really working on, is changing the narrative around sleep.
Amazing. Before we get into everything about sleep, you are a nurse, a midwife. What made you, or what led you to becoming a sleep coach?
So it's really interesting. As a midwife, many of my friends would really struggle at the idea that I literally could survive on 4 hours sleep a night.
Wow.
And I could, and function really, really well. But the more that I'm learning about science, the more that I realize I was actually doing a disservice to my body. Now, I have 3 adult daughters. And as you say, I was a midwife, and I'd be on night duty. And, I'd be up all night with my clients, and then I'd come home in the morning and I'd be up all day with my 3 daughters. But the more that I learn about how detrimental poor sleep is, for example, the World Health Organization, they've actually brought in another section whereby looking at shift workers are much more likely, they have a higher incidence of cancer because of purely by the fact that they have a poor circadian rhythm due to their poor sleep. Because that's what it means: poor sleep, poor health. So I came into the sleep work in that, as I was just saying at the beginning, my friends thought it was highly amusing that I'm now very much wanting people to learn about sleep when I myself, but I did function really, really well. And that's what I think is hard for us to understand. If I knew then what I know now, I know I would have given myself a lot more than the hours that I was giving, because it is about longevity. It is about health span.
Yeah.
It's not about lifespan, and sleep gives us that.
Very interesting. You spoke about 4 hours of sleep. It kind of takes me back to my working days. I was a chef. I used to work 16, 17 hours a day, and, just probably get a few hours of sleep, and, you're back in action. Specifically during the holiday days, the sleep was actually kind of, it was not there in your agenda.
No, but research very recently is showing us that when you sleep for 4 hours or less that night, your anti-cancerous cells drop by 70%. Now, again, that's not meant to frighten somebody, although it's a really alarming statistic. But it's having that information. And then the next day, you can do something about it, because sometimes it's just not, it's out of our control for many reasons, whether, we've had to do something with work, and work is so demanding. We have to get something in on time. But then that you will do everything in your power, starting from the minute you wake up in the morning the next day, to ensure that you don't have such a poor night's sleep. So I was talking on Monday night. I was at an event on Monday night, and I was talking to a very well-known radio presenter here in Dubai, and we were discussing their sleep, which gave me anxiety, knowing how little sleep. But again, I got a note back the next day to say, I actually got 6 hours. Great. That's a great start. So I think being cognizant of it, we are able to make those changes. And even like yesterday, I was speaking with someone, and they have just returned from California, so their jet lag is really awful. So I was saying that there's 3 practical things that we can do, which are very easy. And it's not just for jet lag, but everything. So I'm sure we'll talk in a little while about our circadian rhythm. And if we really want to help our sleep, it's to have that strong circadian rhythm. And that is strengthened from as soon as we wake up in the morning. Now, with our circadian rhythm, our biological clock is operating on day-night, day and night schedule. So when we wake up in the morning, say at 6:30, and the first thing we do is to look at our phone, we actually give the brain a huge shot of cortisol and adrenaline, because the blue light that's emitted from the phone is telling the brain it's 2:00 in the afternoon. So now the brain suddenly goes in. We've activated the sympathetic nervous system, and now it's in a panic that, oh my goodness, it's 2:00, when it's not. So already we've started our day with raised cortisol when we don't need to. So the first thing that we really need to do is to go outside for as little as 3 minutes. 3 minutes is enough to set our circadian rhythm. Now, if you can stay longer, even better. Now, I know it's really hot here in Dubai, for example, but 3 minutes you can manage. You can sit out on the balcony, and then you're getting the right information, which then is converted to the brain, and that strengthens our circadian rhythms. That's the first thing. So as soon as we wake up, get out onto the balcony or out into your garden. Now, we also know that if you look out through the window, so you might say, well, if I just look out through the window, it's actually 50 times less effective looking out through the window than simply stepping outside. So it's not as helpful. So that's the first thing. We also know that sleep is very dehydrating. And the recommendations are that we consume between 6 and 900 mils of water. That's the first thing we do to replenish all the fluid that's been lost during the night. Now, again, like we said from the very beginning, 600 mils might, if you're not that inclined, it might seem like a lot. But actually, start where you want to start and then build up gradually. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is to do a few stretches. Now, the reason why these few stretches, so it's not, a workout or anything like that, just a few stretches. And when you do these stretches, what it does, it releases information, or it sends information to the brain to prepare the human growth hormone to be released at night. So if you're doing that from the very start, and it will build up, so therefore you're going to get better sleep in the evening. So that's what I'm saying. It's practical skills like that that are really going to help with your sleep.
Yeah, very interesting. I think simple, but
it
doable.
has to be. Life is so chaotic and so demanding. We've got to meet where we're at.
Why is sleep so vital? Like, everyone is talking about sleep.
I think one of the main reasons is because technology, ironically, is what is really enabling us to understand so much more now about sleep. So, for example, quite a recent discovery is we've discovered that an adult sleep cycle is approximately 90 minutes long, whereas for our children from 12 weeks old until approximately 10 to 11 years before they hit puberty, their sleep cycle is approximately 1 hour. Now, with us and our children, within that 90-hour cycle, there are 4 to 5 phases, depending on which literature that you look at. I mean, we have a very famous neuroscientist, Matthew Walker, and he talks about the 5 phases within one sleep cycle, and then other neuroscientists will talk about 4, and that's also a little bit complicated, but stage 2 of the one sleep cycle, it releases these electrical impulses, and they are known as sleep spindles, which is really, really exciting. It's a very exciting discovery. Now, these sleep spindles are responsible for different types of memory encoding. So, for example, if you were to go to the gym and learn something within movement that requires, your gross motor skills, those sleep spindles are going to enhance that memory. And that's why, for example, we've just, come out of the Olympics and we've got the Paralympics at the minute. But the studies are very, very clear that a 9-minute nap enhances the performance of the athletes, and enhances in that, for example, with basketball players, their accuracy of shot was greater. And that was just with a 9-minute nap. And that's because those sleep spindles are being released in the first part of the sleep cycle. So going back to why sleep is important, we've also got to recognize that there's only one thing more important than sleeping: breathing. Nothing more is, people will talk about the 3 pillars of health and the 5 pillars of health, but actually all of these pillars, sleep is the foundation.
True.
We can't exercise if we haven't slept well, because we are much more prone to injury.
Yep.
It doesn't matter what you're putting in your body. It can be the most nutritious food, organic, the most expensive. But if you've not slept well and your gut isn't at its optimal to absorb these nutrients, then that's going to be far less effective. So we really do. They're all very, very important pillars of health, but sleep is the foundation. So that's why it's so important, because as we said at the beginning, there isn't one aspect of our being that isn't impacted by sleep.
How many hours sleep would you recommend?
So again, there's a number of answers to this question, but basically everyone talks about the 8 hours. But if we look at the maths, it can't be 8 hours. We're either a 7-hour sleeper or a 9-hour sleeper. The sleep cycle is 90 minutes. So that's why it can't be 8 hours. Now, we all have our own unique sleep. And if I think about my family, I'm definitely a 7-hour sleeper. And my chronobiology is that of an owl. My husband, he's a 9-hour and possibly 20, but and he's a lark. My eldest daughter, Tara, she's a 9-hour sleeper like her father, in fact, could do with more, but not too much more. And she's also a lark. My second daughter's like me. She is a 7-hour and an owl. And my youngest daughter, Eleanor, she is a 9-hour, but really wishes she was 7. And she's tried to fight against it, but we can't go against the biology of our clocks. So it's either 7 or 9. And we know this by when we wake up after 9 hours sleep, for example. Do we feel rested? Are we ready to get up and go? Or are we really, unproductive and very tired and sleepy throughout the day? So again, it's looking at how we perform ourselves during the day and how well we wake up. Do we need an alarm clock, for example? I never need an alarm clock. I always wake myself naturally. So it's 7 or 9 hours.
Okay, interesting. I think I'm a 9-hour. Probably potentially can go more. Used to be much lower before, but I think, but my husband is the 7-hour. But make sure when he wakes up, rest of the world wakes up. So I think, that's why I think we all are 7 hours. But it's a good understanding, because a lot of people say 6 hours, 8 hours is always
6 hours. I know, like, you've got the 5 a.m. club, and I will have clients who say to me, look, I've got to get my exercise in, Julie, because for my mental health, that is really important. But what they're not recognizing, by getting up at 5 in the morning, that actually, and they'll say, oh, I'm only missing out on 20% of my sleep. And I will remind them that actually they're missing out on 80% of their rapid eye movement sleep. And that rapid eye movement, that's all about emotional processing. And you think about your days as a chef, where you were getting poor sleep. No wonder everyone was emotional, because nobody was getting their rapid eye movement sleep, which is basically free therapy. It allows you to process all the emotions of what has happened through the day. So basically, when we go to sleep at night, everything that we experience during the day is stored in our short-term memory. So here at the front of the brain. Now, when we go to sleep at night, it's almost like it's, transferred onto a USB stick, all those old people, but onto a USB stick and then transferred to the appropriate places within our brain, for memory, for gross motor skills, fine motor skills. All of those elements are transferred and then stored and filed. But if we're not getting enough sleep, the right amount of sleep, and that's why it's not just about duration, the quality of our sleep is really, really important. I also speak to people who say, oh, well, I go to bed at 9 and then I get up at 5. Our biological clock has not been activated then. yet at 9 o'clock, not as an adult.
Interesting. Why would you say that?
Because, so again, going back to our circadian rhythm is the almost like going round. The melatonin comes in and the cortisol goes down,
Yep.
and we do this rotation throughout the day and the night, every single day. Now, that is governed by a group of cells that we call the suprachiasmatic nuclei, and they sit just behind the eye,
Okay.
just above the roof of our mouth, and they're linked to the optic nerve. Now, this group of cells informs all the other clocks in our body what time it is. So how many clocks do you think we have in our body, roughly?
If I would just take a number, random number, maybe 6.
37.
Wow.
So we have 37 clocks in our body, but of course we have trillions of clocks on all the other, because every single cell in the body has a clock. And just to explain how important it is and its significance, in 2017, there was 3 doctors who were awarded the Nobel Prize for Medicine for their work on the circadian rhythm. So again, with our sleep, the early half of the night's sleep is all about deep sleep. So the early half is when the human growth hormone is released,
Yep.
that deep, deep sleep for repair and restoration.
Yep.
And then the second half, roughly from around 4 o'clock, that's when the body enters a lighter sleep. And that's when we have the rapid eye movement. So the first half is non-REM sleep. The second half is rapid. Now, what activates all of this is the melatonin. So the melatonin is almost like the key that starts the engine. Now, due to the light that is indicative of time outside,
Yep.
that melatonin is not going to be turned on. The engine is not going to be turned on till at least 9:30, somewhere between 9:30 and 10. Now, 9:30, if you are a lark, if your chronobiology is that of a lark, so you like to sleep early and you like to get up early. So for me, if I was to try and go to bed at 9:30, it would be impossible. My melatonin had not come in to inform all the clocks in my body that it was time to sleep. Just like if, my husband, if he was to stay up really, really late, you'd see he was very, very sleepy, but he'd still wake up early in the morning.
Yeah. I think we as a family tend to sleep pretty early. We go to bed early.
And do you get up early?
We get up early.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we're just used to that kind of a cycle in general. Probably the last person to get up would be me. but yeah.
But when we're talking about early, 5 o'clock is the body is still sleeping and it still has the melatonin. So all the systems within the body are not ready to wake up yet. And that's why if we're looking at teenagers, for example, teenagers have a very different type of sleep to adults and children.
Yeah.
And we know that their biological clock, there's a huge shift.
Yep.
So the melatonin comes in considerably later.
Yeah.
So whereas with us as adults, it comes in somewhere around 9:30, 10. With the teenagers, it can be as late as 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, depending on their chronotype,
Yeah.
depending on that shift. And there's been a number of studies and many movements to delay the start time for school for teenagers, because what they were discovering was by allowing a later start time at the schools, there's less accidents.
Yeah.
Certainly a lot of the teenagers are now driving, but certainly their reaction times were hugely impaired the more sleep deprived they are.
Sleep, yeah.
But equally their results within, their exams. So for example, even the children who are on really, really high SATs levels, by getting extra sleep, they raise their performance considerably.
If you train the kids, and just talking about teenagers, but if from a young age they're trained to sleep at a proper time and then wake up, does this melatonin release still gets delayed as they become a teenager, or it's just the exposure to the external world is the reason that this release is happening slower?
This is such an important question. And if I think of all the adults that I work with, I would say that as much as 80%, as many as 80% of the clients that I would work with have never learned how to fall asleep at the very beginning. So it's always been done for them. We fix and we rescue with our children. But sleep in its purest form is a learned behavior. It's not intuitive. Mm. So it's like learning to drive a car. It's like learning to ride a bicycle. And it's like learning to swim. It is something that we have to learn. And without question, that is what I see. That it's also very often accompanied with anxiety. And we're not quite sure what got there first. Was it the poor sleep which caused the anxiety? Or was it the anxiety that caused the poor sleep? this is, with adults, but definitely if we look back in their history, recently I have been contacted by two 19-year-olds. And again, if we look back, they never learned to sleep as children, ever. It's so fundamental to all of us. So going back to answer your question, as a teenager, there is a huge shift in their biological clock. So yes, you can put all these really important sleep habits in place, really healthy sleep habits, because then our children are recognizing when they feel tired, not overtired.
Yep.
When we look at teaching our children, when we teach them from a very young age, that is their very first natural limit and boundary that we put in place when we're teaching our children. So, for example, we know that some children from as young as 4 months can learn how to fall asleep.
Yep.
Learn. They can't do it by themselves. And we know that from the age of 5 months, they access a part of the brain called the cingulate cortex. And that means that they can learn to self-soothe, that they can self-soothe. Yeah. But again, we're always cautious because of, not wanting to push the children, get them to do something that we're not certain they can do. But all the psychologists and sleep specialists agree that from 6 months, a child can learn how to fall asleep, but most importantly, go back to sleep. And that, again, is due to the melatonin coming in at a certain time in the evening and then going at a certain time in the morning. It resets every single day. Now, we also know that there's 3 periods of growth within our lifetime. And the first time is from conception to birth. The second is birth to 3 years of age. And then the final one is 10 to 13, where you have all the neurons, and it's called pruning. I'm sure you've heard. So it's called pruning, and that happens. But after that, that's when there is this huge shift in their biological clock. So it's without of their control. They, I'm sure you will remember your mum saying, I can't get her to sleep at night and I can't get her up in the morning. Yeah. But that's because there was a very definite physiological reason. And interestingly, it switches back somewhere between 19 and 21. So our biological clock comes back where the melatonin is released somewhere around 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Talking about menopause, which is, I think, I'm very passionate about that topic. How does that specifically affect the circadian rhythm? Is because of the hormonal changes that happen, that women go through this phase. How does that affect sleep hygiene or sleep health, as you would like to call it?
Oh, I mean, it impacts it hugely. And if we're looking at the research, we know that as high as 40 to 60% of all women going through menopause suffer with sleep issues. And it's impacted, again, hormonally. It's playing a huge part. But then again, lifestyle doesn't support good sleep. And then when you have this huge disruption in our hormones, then sleep is going to be the one that is quite often the most impacted. And a lot of it is due to, the estrogen. Yeah. I think one of the things that everyone talks about when it comes to menopause is the hot flushes or the restless legs.
Or the night sweats.
Or the night sweats. But there's lots of other things as well, such as, for me, for example, the only thing that I knew was tinnitus. And that's because, estrogen is responsible for every single part of us. And of course, when our estrogen is low, then within my hearing and my, I was impacted with tinnitus, but that was the only aspect. We were talking before about palpitations. Yeah. That also is a sign of low estrogen. So estrogen has a huge part to play in terms of our circadian rhythm and the disruption of that. And then, of course, temperature. Temperature is also very, very important when it comes to sleep. And again, one of the reasons that the temperature is so important is that, so when we are going to sleep at night, again, the melatonin is very high and we would hope the cortisol is low. So it rotates and the cortisol takes over and cancels out the melatonin. Now, one of the aspects that will cause the cortisol to rise throughout the night is when our core body temperature is rising, because that is what not naturally happens during the day and during the night. Now, when that core body temperature rises, say with the hot flushes, then the body is in absolute conflict. It can't understand. I think it's still the nighttime, but the core body temperature is this hot. Yeah. So we must be...
We must wake up or,
Yeah. So then that really causes our poor sleep. So that's one of them. And then, of course, eating, what we're eating at night and the body doesn't digest it as well. Again, going back to estrogen, and bone density is impacted. So we're not moving as much and we're not exercising as much. Our mood health is also impacted. So all of these things have a definite impact on our sleep.
You were speaking about this, and I was just, at the back of my head, I was thinking, nowadays there are a lot of these new things like, grounding mats and, lights to be used specifically to help you go to bed. What's your take on that?
The evidence and the decisions are still out about the grounding. I do think anything that works, use it. But in terms of light therapy is very interesting because with the red light therapy, so I had a client in Denmark and their melatonin levels were not low, and yet their sleep was they were really struggling with their sleep. And so because of their mood being low, I suggested about the red light therapy. Now that also helped with their mitochondrial function. That's where it really boosted it, but it didn't really help, particularly with the sleep, until we started using it in a way that was best because of course, that red light, it's bright LED lighting.
Yep.
So that is going to send an inaccurate signal to the brain about what time it is. So it's about knowing when to use the therapies and how well they will impact your sleep or how greatly they will impact your sleep. It's like, for example, there's been over 2,000 papers that have been submitted in the States, for example, demanding that all LED lighting carries a health warning. So just like years and years ago, cigarette packets now have the health warning on.
Yeah.
They're really trying to get health warnings to be on LED lighting because LED lighting is like looking at a screen.
Yeah.
So it is completely disrupting our circadian rhythm. Now, other aspects here would be, what I would recommend is if you have to have LED lighting, and I know we want to be kind to the planet, but the two places that you would make sure you didn't have LED lighting, one would be in your bathroom and the other would be in your bedroom, because we want to give as accurate information to the brain that sleep is coming soon. But if you have your melatonin that is thinking it's 12 o'clock at night and 1 o'clock in the morning, and you get up to go to the bathroom and you turn the light on, you have now completely disrupted that melatonin. So lighting is very important, particularly natural light. Again, as we said, getting out into that natural light, getting out into the afternoon, it only needs to be for 3 minutes. And that helps to really reset your circadian rhythm, which is going to support deeper sleep. So it's about quality, not just quantity.
I know we're just going off topic, but there was again something at the back of my head. What's your take on naps? You spoke about, the Olympic players with a 9-minute nap. Their productivity was really, really good. With women, does a power nap like this help? And what time would be the right time?
Naps are really helpful. If you know that you're going to have a really late night, you've got a big presentation to make in the afternoon, for example, a nap is really helpful. Now, according to NASA, the perfect nap duration is 26 minutes. But again, it depends on you as an individual. There's something that I talk about called a nappuccino.
Nice.
Now, what a nappuccino is, you have a coffee right before you know that you're going to nap. And what that does, when you wake 20 minutes after, the caffeine has kicked in. And so you don't wake with this grogginess and this kind of sleep inertia that it's known as. So you've still replenished the body. You've had that rest. You've reduced your cortisol level. So a nap is a great idea. However, if you take the nap too late into the afternoon, then that's going to rob your body of the sleep pressure. And then you're going to have a poor quality sleep that night. So we talked at the beginning about circadian rhythms. Now, in order for us to sleep, there's two mechanisms that we need. The first one is our circadian rhythm, and then the second one is sleep pressure. And sleep pressure is like hunger. The longer we go without food, the hungrier we become. So sleep pressure is the same. So if you fall asleep too late into the afternoon and have too long a nap, or if you fall asleep on the sofa about 7 o'clock and you wake up at 8, we know sleep is going to be disrupted because we need that sleep pressure to pull you through a full night's sleep. So naps are great. But just when you do it and how.
Very interesting. I am someone who just cannot nap.
That's not true.
I wake up, I struggle. Like even if I try, I close my eyes, I go to bed. It's very, very challenging.
But you see, just like we're talking about sleep, the same about the nap. We want to really change the narrative. It's just letting go of the tyranny of now and just saying, not yet. And if you start to practice, like we said, learning to fall asleep is like learning to drive a car. You can drive a car, Can you? Yep. You can ride a bicycle.
Yeah.
And you can swim.
Yes.
You can certainly sleep.
Okay.
It's all about changing our belief system. It's so much about changing our belief system. If you have a plan, so you prepare and know that, okay, it might not work today, and you keep trying and you keep trying, you will be able to nap. So it's about putting in place what is going to be your sleep ritual. So Ariana Huffington, for example, she doesn't go anywhere without her eye mask. Anywhere. She always has one in her bag. And if she's on the plane, if she's on the train, if she's in a car, eye mask comes out, earpods, white noise, and she naps for 10, 20 minutes. But she didn't do that immediately. She had to prime her body. Falling asleep is almost like resetting your GPS. And unfortunately, me included, I use my GPS all the time now for getting to where I need to go. And I know that's made my brain really lazy. And it's actually dismantled my ability to know, oh, okay, if I went there, that would lead me here. And I'm now relying on technology, which has robbed me of my own ability to recognize and find my own way. And it's the same with our sleep. So you will be able to nap as long as you practice and you put things in place and you repeat. Yeah. So it's all about consistency, predictability, and repetition.
Very interesting. I'm going to probably put that in my
to-do list.
Yeah. Some common misconceptions that people think about sleep and menopause. Are there any things that people say that, no, like I said, I said that I can't sleep or I can't nap. Are there anything similar that people relate to with sleep and menopause?
Very much around the fact that I can't, as I'm going through the menopause, I know my sleep is going to be shot to pieces and there's nothing I can do about it. I hear that so frequently, but it's not true. There's always things that we can do about it. Whether, like now, for example, there's some great products on the market that, cooling pads, and they can just be on your side of the bed. So it doesn't have to be for everyone. There's some really great products that we can look at. We can look at taking different supplements that can help that mind that is racing. Because the other thing which is really interesting, talking about research, is that, and I'm sure you are aware of it, lots of research now is seeing a correlation between the menopause and ADHD being identified more and more. Yeah. So that's really fascinating. But again, having that knowledge, we can now do something about it, which again is going to give us the information how to approach a better night's sleep, whether it's looking at your sleep health, whether it's looking at your giving naps during the day, whether it's looking at organizing your day so we're not overwhelmed. All of these things can really help. So that's a definite one. I know my sleep's terrible because I'm going through the menopause. It doesn't have to be like that.
Anything that people or women should do, like a pattern, winding down the evening, what would your suggestion be? What should they do? Are there any particular steps that they should, like you said, when they wake up in the morning, the 3 things that you should do? Is there anything like that can help, get into the whole thing that, this is now winding down and I've got to go to sleep now?
Yeah. So, there are things that we can all do, but particularly, women who are experiencing the menopause where their brain is so active and very often they're overwhelmed and they're not motivated enough to do some things, but it's about recognizing what they can do and then go with it and try it. And if it doesn't work, well, that's fine. We can start again tomorrow. But certain things like looking at food, the time that you eat your meal, we know that if you're going to have a heavy meal, then you need to have finished eating approximately 3 hours before bed. However, if you have something like grilled fish and some grilled vegetables, then 2 hours, because we also don't want you going hungry to bed, because that will also impact your sleep. So we know that. So have your meal, make sure you have your meal early, depending what you're eating. Then I would really recommend that you set an alarm on your phone to start your wind down, to prompt you, okay, it's 9 o'clock, I need to come off my devices and I need to do some reading, or I might go for a walk, just a short walk, or something that is going to start to calm your brain down, to give your brain the signal that sleep will be coming soon. So and then light, of course, light, dimming all the light. So again, that information to our SCN, the suprachiasmatic nuclei, the information is accurate around what time it is. Often having a bath in the evening, that is really helpful for sleeping, because that will actually paradoxically reduce your core body temperature. So that can help. But having these rituals and also, different essential oils, because they can have a very relaxing impact on your mood. You know, having a bath with candles. Candles are perfect for sleep. I am part of a university faculty, and we have lectures every week in the States. And a couple of months ago, we had a lecture with this neuroscientist from California. And he said, just to tell everyone, from 6 p.m, I come off all my devices, and I'm not on my laptop at all. And I'm awake using candlelight.
Okay.
And then he said, I'm not some hippie. I'm a hard-nosed neuroscientist, but I know that the light from the candles is going to really benefit my melatonin, which actually is going to reduce the incidence of cancer, because in my family, there's a lot of cancer. So I want the melatonin to do its job. So I want to get its full amount. And one of the best ways is, from a neuroscience perspective, is candles. So there are things that we can do. Journaling is also really, really helpful. By getting all these thoughts and these to-do lists, get them out of our head, down on paper. So things that help you wind down are really important.
Very interesting. Any supplements that you would recommend?
So again, it's finding out, excuse me, what is going to be helpful for you. But if we're looking at one of the supplements that I would recommend, and it is one of the safest supplements to take, and that is magnesium. Now, magnesium, there's lots of different types of magnesium, but we know that it's responsible for over 300 chemical reactions in our body. So, and of course, we know it's known as the sleep mineral, because the magnesium relaxes the central nervous system.
Yep.
So magnesium taurine is a really good one for sleeping. And we'd need to take it for about a week prior to really seeing the impact of it. So that would be a really helpful supplement to take. Other supplements, things such as teas. It doesn't have to be just chamomile. Passion flower can have a really relaxing impact on our body. And the evidence is there, thankfully. Ashwagandha also is really helpful. 5-HTP, GABA. These are all, like GABA and 5-HTP. These are neurotransmitters. And they, with our modern day living, these neurotransmitters are often depleted. So they just help to boost these neurotransmitters. But I do think that we have to recognize they shouldn't be taken long term. They should be there just to boost. So be mindful about supplements that we're taking, apart from magnesium, for example, simply because that just isn't in our, we used to get it in our food, but modern day farming, the food has been depleted of these minerals, such as magnesium and such as zinc. So that's why we need to take these supplements. And it might be that you take for 1 month and then stop for a week and then you take again. So things like that are helpful.
Brilliant. We can keep talking about sleep all for the whole day long. But I think if our listeners want to get in touch with you, Julie, how can they reach you?
Well, you can find me on Nurture to Sleep, my Instagram page. I have a podcast, Sleepless in Dubai, and my website, Nurture to Sleep.
Brilliant. This podcast is, before we go, this podcast is all about women, 99% of our conversation is about women wellness, what can we do better to help women and everything. But the interesting fact is that men are a part of our lives too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this segment, the last segment, is called the 1%, which is for the 1% men in our lives. What is your advice to the men in our lives? What can they do better to support the women?
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. And that's why when we look about the symptoms that women are going through with the menopause, the men need to know about them. So it's about having that open dialogue, having that conversation around this is what to expect, this is what I'm going through, and including the men in workshops, in sharing articles and sharing books. That's what we can do, because only then will they know how hard it is.
Amazing. Thank you.
So, okay.
I had an absolutely amazing time today with Julie. I hope you guys have learned a lot about sleep today and how important it is in our lives. Until next time, menopause. Why pause? Let's play.